Let me see when every time I go live, it's always like, okay, we're live. Maybe we're live. I think
Yep.
YouTube is telling me that we are connected. I'm just going to give it a couple seconds just so I can be able to check all the technical things. Okay, perfect.
That's what makes sure my
We
background. Okay.
Your background looks great. Looks like you got some nice framed art from your children. It looks beautiful. Okay, everybody, we are live. This is our final expert series. If this is your first time tuning into the Restart channel or your first time tuning into one of our expert series, I encourage you to please go check out the rest of our channel. We do a lot of educational content. We are a cannabis brand based in Austin, Texas. We really care about education and high quality products for our consumers, which is really the foundation for us wanting to bring together some of our partners and vendors to our expert series for you guys so that you can learn, you can be curious, you can maybe connect with a brand that you maybe haven't heard of or learn about a brand a little bit more deeply that maybe you're very curious about. But so today I'm very excited to have Peyton from tCheck. tCheck has been a good friend and partner of ours. So welcome to the expert series. And I would love to just kind of like dive in and start. I mean, I obviously know a little bit of the story behind the brand, but for those who are tuning in, what is tCheck? How did you start the brand? What does the product suite do? And let's dive in there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shayda, for having me on. It's really an honor to be here. And yeah. So our company actually got started about 7, 8 years ago, something like that now. And it actually started all over a dinner party. As it turns out, a friend of ours used cannabis to control her Parkinson's. And she was making edibles at the time because she didn't want to smoke her medicine. Um, and so she would just make them at home. And, 8 years ago, it was before the days of testing and all that. And so she asked us, hey, is there a way for me to to figure out how strong my brownie is? Because sometimes it's too strong, and that means I can't go to work on Monday. And so of course, being engineers, we're like, of course we can figure this out. Engineers can solve everything, right? And so,
It's true.
yeah, so we came up with this contraption, and the first prototype was like just giant. It was humongous, and you had lizard lights in it, and it flickered every time it ran, and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of fun, but it kind of almost sort of. And so we said, okay, well, I wonder if anybody else could use this thing. And so we took this little box and we got the second version, which is like a 3D printed thing about the size of a shoebox. And I went out to the street corners in front of the dispensaries. I literally just stood in front of the dispensaries and started asking people, hey, is this something you might be able to use? And the answer was like, oh, heck yeah. And so eventually we built tCheck. And so this is our current product. We're on the third generation. Yeah, there you go. Third generation of tCheck now. And so it helps people make infused oils and figure out how strong their infused oils are. And with that information, you know how strong your cookie is going to be.
That's a
And
great
so,
story. Obviously, I think, yeah, when you are making something because of something personal that's happening to you or a friend or a loved one, there's obviously a lot of passion behind it. And so it's like the marriage between the engineering, kind of, science brain minded, logistics, logical, like, how do I make something function? And also just the empathetic, like, hey, my friend is hurting, somebody that I care about, and I want to help her solve a problem in the best way that I know how, which now, as you know, you've kind of connected some of the dots. I think that the cannabis industry has evolved in such a beautiful way. I think there are so many ways for people to connect with the plant, whether they are purchasing through a brand or a store like ours with kind of like a final goods product, or they are more in the home cultivator, home baker, home extractor, home infuser. That's not the right word. Home infuser.
user.
That's infuser. What a hard word. I think that's really where, I've observed a similar story, not that I'm necessarily dealing with a diagnosis like that, but just connecting those dots between, okay, hey, when I go to a dispensary, I'm buying a product that says it's 10 milligrams. But then when I'm making something at home, I don't know how strong that product is, and I want to be able to have some, confidence and assurance with what I'm consuming and putting in my body.
Mhm.
Kind of to dive in from there. So yes, I know that you guys just launched tCheck 3. I would love to, dig in a little bit deeper. What have been some of the, I guess, like evolutions or advancements between that first tCheck and the third tCheck? Walk us through, kind of what it is doing. Again, I know a little bit of some of the words or some of the terms, HPLC chromatography, but like what's going on in this little device and, kind of what are some of the different components to actually utilize it and what is different with the tCheck 3 compared to like some of the previous models that you've introduced to the market?
Sure. The original tCheck was this actually exactly the same size. The original tCheck only measured THC in coconut oil and butter, and that was it. That's the only thing it did. I couldn't do anything else. And then, of course, as people got their hands on it, they kept saying, okay, well, can it do this? And can it do this? Can it do this? Right. And so that eventually evolved into tCheck 2. Okay. And it's kind of funny, right? Because the original tCheck actually had a little screen on it. Okay. And people can
Mm-hmm.
tap and drive the tCheck that way. And that was because I was doing a lot of it's called the ground, on the ground research here in Sacramento. And Sacramento is a little bit more conservative than most places. And and everybody's like, yeah, privacy is an issue. Privacy is an issue. I'm like, okay, cool. So we made it a standalone product. And then we brought it down to LA, and that was kind of an eye opener. Okay. And because we got down there and some guy was like, well, why don't you drive it with, your phone, right? And my response was, well, if I put something on your phone, app on your phone, I know a whole lot about you. Don't you care about privacy? And he goes, dude, I'm gonna post this on Facebook. Okay.
Like I
You know,
want to tell people.
that's right. I'm loud and I'm proud about this thing, right? Because this thing helps me. I'm like, okay. And so we then made tCheck 2. And so that allows you to, drive with your phone, right? And so that added some more capabilities like more oils, alcohol infusions, the ability to test raw flower, that kind of thing. And then, of course, the hemp revolution came along, right? And people are like, oh my God, CBD, it really helps me. Can you do one with CBD and hemp? And so, of course, that's how we made tCheck 3. And so there we are. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay,
And
so tCheck 3 has the capabilities of detecting CBD potency versus THC potency.
that's right.
And I guess no dumb questions ever. That's the whole point of this expert series is for me to help kind of filter through what maybe the listeners or viewers might be wondering. Um, what is it doing from a testing perspective? Like how can it detect and what is it kind of detecting in the most simplest terms? Because I guess people don't necessarily maybe fully understand, there's multiple like kind of touch points for testing, right? So I think from a brand perspective, part of our licensing, you are encouraged to have your products tested so that you are checking for things like heavy metals or pesticides, right? So there's like more robust testing
Mhm.
that tCheck isn't necessarily doing. tCheck is more so on the cannabinoid side. And so that is to kind of indicate, again, from a user perspective, I want to know how much CBD or how much THC is in my final product so that I can know potency, right? So it's really around the potency of the cannabinoids that are present.
Mhm.
But just wanted to kind of, understand a little bit more around like I was saying HPLC chromatography. Is that the correct term? And
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
what does
it is.
that mean in um, elementary school terms? Like
Yeah.
what is HPLC chromatography and how does that function in this device? I was just kind of like, kind of visually trying to show people, like you were expressing with tCheck, um, to the capabilities of being able to add more than just what is it, coconut oil, MCT oil, or a butter. There
Mhm.
are really, again, more fodder for the audience. Cannabis is fat soluble. And so you can essentially put cannabis infusions
Mhm.
into any fat based product.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys are still doing a partnership with Levo, but just to kind of make mention for our listeners and audience. We did have a Levo expert series, a couple of expert series ago, so a couple of weeks ago. So just to kind of connect those dots for you guys as you're listening to this, you're watching this, you're like, oh, the Levo one was really cool. I want to make my own infusions at home. tCheck is a great counterpart to Levo because again, you do the infusion, but then I could do math, but like my math isn't always accurate or great. And so being able to test things with tCheck is really helpful to just ensure that potency. But again, kind of back to HPLC chromatography, being able to put that extract, whatever you're infusing it into, in this little chamber, which I like this. This seems to maybe be an upgrade too of the way that this is kind of, like created and put together. So you would put whatever your fat infusion is in here. And then I'm going to insert it into my tCheck. Obviously, I'm condensing it too. You got to make sure it's connected. It's Bluetooth. You're turning it on, but it's going to read my potency and kind of how is it reading my potency? What is it doing
Sure.
when it's testing that?
Okay, sure. Let's first of all, I want to say, shout out to Levo, right? Chrissy over at Levo has been amazing, right? We our two companies actually sort of almost grew up together, and so
Yeah.
it's been super fun to well, she's growing a lot faster than we have, but it's been fun to work together, and we have collaborations going on, we have partnerships going on. I mean, back at MJ BizCon, we actually shared a booth for a couple of years. And so, we're pretty tight. And so, yeah. So anyway, big shout out
No, it
to
makes sense. The products
Levo.
like really do go
Yeah.
hand in hand. So people who are
Yeah.
curious to do the, extraction, decarboxylation, infusion at home with a
Mhm.
Levo device, tCheck is a really great product to also acquire and have in your,
Yeah.
toolkit to be able to really maximize the infusions that you're doing with your Levo device.
Yeah, it's like at home, right? She makes the oven, we make the thermometer.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, so the way that HPLC works is that they actually have this column. Okay, it's actually a really long, skinny tube. Okay, and cannabinoids, being fat soluble, they stick to that column. Okay.
Mm.
And the way HPLC is, it runs all these chemicals and stuff through that column. Okay, and certain cannabinoids have a certain kind of amount of stickiness, if you will, right? So, for example, THCA is a whole lot stickier than CBD. Okay, so it stays in does your husband stays in that column a bit longer. Okay, and but at the end of that column is a detector. Okay, and so as the cannabinoids get unstuck from that column, that detector sees it. Well, tCheck is actually that detector part. Okay,
Mm.
and so that column is there to separate all the different kind of cannabinoids. So it can, because of different stickiness of THC or CBD or THC or CBD, it has different stickiness. So that's the part that we can't do. Okay, we can't separate them. Okay, we just give you one full number. But at the very end of it, which is the detector, we're exactly the same thing, right? And so that's how we sort of simplified the whole thing. Now the tray that you pointed out is actually a bit of magic here. Okay, as it turns out. And the way it works is that the tray is actually concave, okay, like this,
Mm-hmm.
and also convex. And so when you stick them together, there's
It
a
squishes it.
squishes it, okay, and there's a known thickness of oil, okay. And
Mm.
so when we shoot the light through the oil and see how dark it is, it's always the same every single time. Okay. Now there's a bit of trick and stuff like that as far as it goes with sample preparation and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, that's how it works.
Got it. Okay. I'm always learning something new. I feel like the assumption is, working in the cannabis industry, being a cannabis consumer, you kind of have everything figured out. And that's absolutely
No
not the case.
way.
And that's very much the ethos of our brand. It's like we're always learning, we're always exploring, we're always kind of curious. And so I really appreciated getting to use cannabis and through my Levo extractions and infusions learn better about what I'm doing by pairing it with tCheck because just we really believe. I think I've even wearing my shirt today. It says knowledge is power, cannabis is powerful, and again, we really stand behind that ethos and that mission. And so, leaning into curiosity, leaning into data, like leaning into technology that can help empower the end user is really important. And I
Mhm.
really love that tCheck is kind of on that journey to help the consumer really understand what is in their infusion. Really quick on that note, I am just curious because you mentioned it, I'm aware of that you have capabilities to test flour as well, right? So not
Yes.
just the actual like fat infusion. How does
Mhm.
that differ? How does that change? Do the cannabinoids still get read and stick the same way? Is there a different accessory perhaps that helps kind of read in a different way?
Mhm.
Just want to kind of understand, I guess, the full suite. And I say that also because I have so many fun other little tCheck kits with me. So this is an expansion kit, so I'm assuming inside the expansion kit obviously are some additional things, but just for you to help color
Mhm.
what people can access from tCheck and kind of what are those different levers that they can use, because this device stays the same, like this is always what they're using, right?
Mhm.
Do other components kind of interchange from there, and how do you test flour versus like an oil?
Yeah. So the process for testing a flour is to take a little bit of our reagent, Okay, and in our case, we use this stuff called DMSO. You weigh out a bit of your flour, okay, grind it up, stick it in the reagent, shake, 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 and then run it through the tCheck. Okay, if you know how strong it is, we can tell you how strong the plant is. That process was actually lifted from HPLC, so we copied them again. Right? You know, these
Thank
labs
you.
spend millions of dollars trying to figure this out, so we might as well just copy them, right? Um, and, and,
Absolutely.
and
And I'm sure it
so
helps with consistency too, of just like using the same, from my understanding, um, testing standards, right? So there's a lot of like, I wouldn't say variability, but from lab to lab on the more, I would say, business side versus this is obviously like consumer side. You want standards. And so if someone set a standard that kind of works, why would you deviate from that standard?
exactly. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, there's some really smart people at the labs, and they took, you know, a lot of energy to figure this out. And so, like you said, just learn from them. They're the smart guys. Yeah. So that's sort of the fun part, right? We get to go visit labs, talk to labs, and you know, they explain to us how stuff works, and so
Hmm.
they're very open about, okay, well, this is how you go about preparing a sample for testing, you know, X, Y, and Z.
All these little goodies for preparing and testing samples.
Yes.
On the, I guess, like function and use, can you walk us through? And I know you have a teacher in front of you, kind of what is the process for someone to use the device? How would you kind of, again, I know you guys have a lot of videos too, so I'll kind of plug in the rest of tCheck's content. Y'all do a wonderful job walking people through how to actually set up, unbox these, components, but just for people to understand, like you're not using a ton of product to actually test, but like let's say someone has a bunch of flour, has some oil, like where do they begin? They're going to take their sample. Because I remember, for example, the first time I was doing it, I didn't realize that I needed which maybe you don't actually need, but I was watching one of y'all's videos and I needed like a heat thermometer to be able to actually test like the temperature of my
Okay.
sample.
Yeah, we actually,
So,
yeah, and T3, we actually fixed that too. So you no
oh,
longer need that. So we made it easier. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me start out by saying it's really hard to make something easy. Okay. And so there was actually a lot of research done on figuring out how to simplify the whole process. So nowadays we've got it down to basically you load an app on your iPhone or your Android. Okay,
Mm-hmm,
and the
mm-hmm.
app is free on the various stores. Okay, then you pair the phone app to the device. Okay. Now to test an oil, just take actually 3 drops of oil and stick it into the tray. Okay, so you know, 3 drops of oil is very little. Close the tray. Okay, stick it in the thing, and then you know, with like I don't know, 4 taps or something like that on your iPhone, you know, you have to say, okay, am I using butter or coconut oil, whatever, and you know, it'll tell you, well, it's you know, 14 milligrams per teaspoon or something like that. Okay. And once you have that information, let's pretend it's 14 milligrams per teaspoon. And you want to make a 5 milligram cookie. There's a little calculator on there that says, okay, well, if your infusion is 14 milligrams per teaspoon, okay, and you want to make you know, I want to make 4 dozen 5 milligram cookies. Okay, well, you need to mix, you know, 8 tablespoons of your infused oil with, you know, 14 tablespoons of your regular oil, your regular uninfused butter. You mix it all up, you make 4 dozen cookies, and each cookie will be exactly 5 milligrams.
Awesome. Sounds way simpler than obviously tCheck 2 is like the best at the time and like you're constantly like evolving and iterating. I think that is the most empowering thing for like the end user is just like how do you simplify something that could maybe be inaccessible in other capacities, but it's just connecting the technology to making it, more functional for that person who's walking through. But I have to commend you guys. The app is really great. It's really straightforward, like you were saying. I remember I haven't used the tCheck 3. So that is like, this is my unboxing. I'm like doing a little preview with you guys, obviously, here. So you're live kind of watching me also to be like, oh, the tCheck 3 does that. I haven't got a chance to fully like do the download. So again, I'm always like in that position of like learning, evolving. But when I was using the app with tCheck 2, it was really cool to see how intuitive the app was to really walk you through. just like you're saying, what is the base material that you're using? It tells you to go on to the next step. Again, you guys have a lot of really great resources with your own content that you've invested in to really help your consumers be able to use these devices to their fullest potential. And so I know that's why you guys are a leader in this category of at-home potency testing. Now, on that vein, I would love to kind of address maybe what I could assume are some questions. How do you, I guess, qualify the results? I can kind of paint a picture, right? So let's say I'm testing flour and I
Mhm.
purchase it at the dispensary, and the dispensary has the COA, and I can pull because the label might say, oh, this is 17% THC. So I just want to kind of, obviously like qualify or verify. Maybe I have a starting number that I know what I'm trying to kind of, match to,
Mhm.
that I could see, hey, how close is this? And also, part of that question is what is because I know this too, there's always a variance.
Yes.
So even though the number is like, 17, if it's 16 or if it's 18, that's
Mhm.
still within the window. And so I'd love to hear from you just
Yeah.
like what that variance percentage is. But
Mhm.
then how do you kind of guide or encourage or communicate to consumers who maybe don't have any idea? Like, this is me a couple times. I find some, pot, and I want to make an infusion. And so I pull my levo out and I'm like, yeah, here's an eighth, maybe.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the potency of the THC was in the eighth. And so therefore, I'm not starting with a number of kind of what I would expect to maybe know is the outcome, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm just like trying to understand, how do I know what my test is? Like, what's the accuracy of a tCheck, and how do I qualify that as the consumer who's trying to do the
Sure.
math?
Sure. And testing flour, the thing is actually quite accurate. So we will claim plus or minus 3%.
Plus or minus
Uh,
3%.
yeah. So if the T-check says it's 20%, it's going to be somewhere between 17 and 23%.
Very cool.
Now, if you take that to a lab, if you get the COAs from the lab, I don't know if you ever, no, I don't know if anybody ever reads the fine print and the details in the COAs, but the lab will say plus or
Probably not.
yeah, right. The lab itself will actually say plus or minus 1 or maybe 1.2%. Okay, so even compared to a lab, we're pretty darn close,
Yeah.
right?
And there's always variance.
Yes, there's always variance, right? And then the other thing is oils. Okay, so for oils, we're going to be plus or minus 3 milligrams per milliliter, right? And so you can be a little bit off, okay, but it should be pretty darn close to what it is you need. Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you recommend people testing multiple, I guess, to get an average almost? Like, is it pretty
Mhm.
foolproof for people to, you test the tCheck once and it
Yeah.
says it's X amount of milligrams per, ml. And it's like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to go make my brownies. Like, is that pretty, just again, like looking at
Yeah.
devices and technology, is that pretty
Yeah.
assured to where if someone's going to go then make those brownies at home, it's going to be pretty accurate?
Yeah. So the old adage when you're doing woodworking, you measure twice, cut once.
Yes. Yes.
Same thing here. Always the same thing here. In chemistry, the rule of thumb is measure 3 times and take the
Mm.
middle one. Okay. For folks who demand, rigorous accuracy, we recommend exactly the same thing, PhD chemists use. Measure it 3 times, take the middle reading, right? Because there's always going to be a variance. Now, before that, though, you do have to make sure that you do the sample preparation correctly. Okay, because cannabinoids are not exactly perfectly dissolved in an oil.
Mm.
Okay. When you make like, say, I don't know, sugar water, salt water, the sugar molecules and the salt molecules get very well dispersed into the water. Okay. And they stay in solution. Cannabinoids, on the other hand, are somewhere closer to a suspension. Okay. Where they'll actually settle over time. And we've actually measured that they can settle in as fast as, just a couple of few hours. Uh,
Mm.
and so before you test, let's say you make a jar of infused oil, right? We definitely recommend that you take that jar and shake the heck out of it, okay, to make sure that everything is really, really nice and well homogenized or well mixed
Hmm.
up. And once that happens, then you take the syringe, you take out some and you run it through that filter that we supply, right? And that gets rid of all the tiny little plant bits. You might not be able to see the plant bits, but they're definitely there. Okay. Filter out the plant bits, you do that process, and you get a pretty good reading every single time.
What do the plant bits do? Do they just compromise some of the readability of what cannabinoids are sticking? Like,
Cannabinoids actually you can't see them with your eye, right? I mean, well, I don't know. Here's a sample, right? But, um, you know, this one's a little golden color because it's been
Hmm.
oxidized a little bit. But they're when we make a fresh batch, they're almost colorless. Um, However, in the visible UV spectrum, they're extremely dark. Right? And that's why the tCheck is a UV spectrometer. Now it absorbs a lot of UV light, but if you have chunks of stuff like little like bits of plant in there, they also block UV light, and that will contribute to your error. That's why you definitely want to filter it before you measure it, because you don't want to you don't want overreading.
No, that makes sense too. I think just like some of those nuances, again, it's one of those things like people just don't fully understand the liquid could look very clear in some
Mhm.
capacities, but to your point, they're so microscopic, and
Yeah.
that's the sensitivity too of the testing devices, right? And so they are calibrated to a certain I don't know what the right word is, but like, variance or degree of what they're reading. And so any little, infraction is compromising the readability, I would assume. And so just
Yeah.
making sure that you're doing your sampling correct, your preparation correctly is going to only, net out a better test result on the end of that test. And
Mhm.
then testing 3 times. That's a really great reminder for people out there, just in general. Obviously, I think there is some interesting, you know, gaps between testing, I think, in general. So, like, as a brand, again, like, we are required to have our products COA tested.
Mhm.
But do consumers always read the COAs? Do they understand what they're reading in the COAs? I think from a potency perspective, certainly there's a lot of conversation around looking for, just in general, the THC, people are always looking for how high the THC is. And there's a little bit of, the marketing and the selling of people want the highest THC. Why? They want it. Is it better? I don't care. I want the highest
And the
THC. And
biggest
so I
number,
think,
yeah.
yeah, like that's like a little arbitrary because it's like, well, what is the highest THC? I haven't necessarily seen something higher than like 33, 34%. So if someone's like, this is 40% THC, I'm like, we should question that. Like, is that actually legitimate? Um,
Yeah.
so that's obviously not in this realm at all, but just like trying to communicate for consumers to understand how you are reading, specifically for the percentages of cannabinoids, because that does make a difference, right? Especially when you're dealing with, I think, both CBD and THC, right? Because this is a conversation that kind of got brought up at a couple expert series ago as well. Consumers, especially in our world where cannabis maybe isn't as normalized yet here in Texas, we're certainly trying, but they maybe have an experience of, let's say, 5 milligrams of THC. And then when they go to take CBD, they're then like, okay, yeah, 5 milligrams of CBD, which I would argue is a really low amount of CBD. And so treating
Mhm.
each cannabinoid independently and really trying to understand like what is a good dose for you for that cannabinoid is extremely important. So
Mhm.
for me, I find that I like 5 to 10 milligrams of THC. 15 is maybe my cap. 20 is way too much for me. But versus like CBD, I can have upwards of 40, 50, 60, 100 milligrams of CBD. And my body actually responds really well to that because CBD for me is really helpful from an anti inflammatory perspective. And so just understanding those percentages of the potency of those cannabinoids is really important. So then to drive it back with tCheck, it's like if I'm doing an infusion and I want to know, hey, 5 milligrams versus 5 milligrams. Okay, well, I don't want 5 milligrams of CBD because it's not going to be effective for me. So I need to up my CBD in this, recipe that I'm making. And so understanding those different cannabinoid potencies, percentages is really important to craft what is the right. I'm going to use the word formulation, right? And so it's being able to take these individual cannabinoids, creating a blend that works best for you, your particular outcome, or just what your body kind of responds to best. I think is
Mhm.
really helpful and really important. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I thought that was relevant to kind of point out and share because it isn't
Yeah.
just 5 milligrams, 5 milligrams. It's like those are different experiences, right?
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. And how you take it matters so much too, right? So for example, if you're trying to treat one thing and you need a 5 milligram edible, okay, to treat one particular condition. Now, on the other hand, let's say you have, I don't know, arthritis, okay, so you're making a topical for your arthritis. Well, the absorption, the way the cannabinoid gets into your body, through the skin is very different than through your stomach and your liver and all that. And so the dose will be very, very different there, right? And so, unfortunately, you have to experiment on yourself to figure out what the right dose is. Okay, and that's all important, right? Because too much is no fun, right?
Right.
And so figure that out, and then too little is also no fun, right? Because
It's not effective.
yeah, exactly. You want that Goldilocks zone, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Hit the happy place, and it's really important to know your dose to do that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's just empowering people with education and information and resources. And that's where I think tCheck has been a really great addition to our industry and to the marketplace because consumers really should be empowered with that information, especially when it crosses the line. Again, I think that tCheck can apply if you are, let's say, testing products that have already been maybe tested, right, for like quality or just verification. But I really see the value for this product of, hey, I want to make products at home. I want to understand, and be in control of what I'm putting in my body. I think there's, a whole new world out there. We actually just launched, this is kind of like a teaser. We are launching infused butter at Restart. So we will be
Oh,
selling
awesome.
butter sticks so our
Yeah.
consumers can take and make their own brownies at home. So my butter will have a COA that says this stick of butter is this strong, but
Mhm.
you want to maybe do the math. You want to maybe, see what your infusion is if you're going to then put it into edibles, a cake, whatever you're making with that butter. And so being able to then, kind of test that secondary recipe, so to speak, when you're at home is just really
Mhm.
more reinforcement, just to know what you're putting and consuming in your body. So obviously we're
Yeah.
big fans over here. So
Yeah,
on
for sure.
that front, I know that when did tCheck 3 launch? You mentioned the company's 7 years old. When did
Uh,
tCheck 3 launch?
2 months ago.
2 months ago. Okay, so it's a little fresh in the market. So I know I can't ask like, okay, well, what's next? But kind of in that vein, I am a little curious, the evolution of being able to test, flour versus the oils or the fats, being able to test CBD in addition to THC. Now we know that there's over 100 plus different cannabinoids. I know that that is sometimes unfathomable because like we sell maybe like five or six in the marketplace at any given time. And so there's just like some that are so minuscule that aside, even like testing things like Delta 8 versus Delta 9 THC, like they're both THCs, but there's variations to how they,
Mhm.
potentially pop up on a test. I'm just curious the technology that you guys are developing. Are there other cannabinoids that you're curious to, incorporate? Or maybe like what are some of those other evolutions that are on the horizon for you guys as you're thinking through, just like where's the market going? What are your consumers telling you, some of the feedback that, they're giving you, and just like I don't know, any fun use cases that you've gotten with tCheck 3 so far? I'm just curious, kind of like, you know, not to diminish the excitement of tCheck 3, but like, what's next? Where's tCheck going? What's coming down the pipeline? So always got to ask that question.
Sure, sure. Actually, I'm going to kick it back to your audience. Okay.
Okay.
tCheck 3 came about because the audience said, hey, we need a hemp tester. Okay. And so
Mm,
we made now, so now we're going to ask the audience again, what do you guys want to see next, right? tCheck right now, tCheck 3 measures infused oils like butter, coconut oil, olive oil, and alcohol tinctures. And that's it. There's only four I guess you can say solvents that are supported. Now, if you guys out there want different kinds of oils supported, added to the tCheck, let us know, right? Drop us a line,
mm,
we'll build it. Yeah, we're customer driven, right? We'll build what you
absolutely.
want, because we're trying to make you guys happy
Mm.
and figure out what you need.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great answer. I appreciate that. I think that is so important and so impactful. So yes, everybody tuning in, listening, like absolutely take Paychain up and like reach out to the tCheck team. They are super knowledgeable and friendly, and like you said, very customer driven and want to really build products and incorporate the feedback from the customers. I will say this isn't necessarily a problem that I would say you should solve, but I think it's an interesting one just to kind of fall on the sword a little bit. We were playing with Levo last year, and we were actually with Leah from your team, and we
Uh-huh.
were making uh, we were trying to infuse buttermilk, which is
Oh,
milk and it's a fat, but the buttermilk I think curdled because we heated it up in a way. Like I don't know, there was a lot of like user error on our end, but it's one of those things like I think people assume. And the market has made it that way, right? Originally, it's like cannabis is supposed to be in sweets. It's supposed to be in a it's supposed to be in a brownie, it's supposed to be in a cookie, a cake. And then I think, the introduction of, well, maybe look, we'll make a savory thing, and so being able to use MCT oil versus olive oil. So now I'm like, okay, well, maybe I could like make an olive oil and make some scrambled eggs or butter and make some, infused toast or something. But it's like as you're kind of deviating and you're thinking like, okay, well, what else is fat that I can put cannabis into? We were like, yeah, buttermilk sounds like a reasonable next step. So again, I'm not saying that that needs to be, and I don't know if that is like somewhere like a pseudo butter oil, maybe. I don't know if y'all have gotten milk as a request of something to infuse to test. Again, I can't say there's like a massive market, even though my husband the other day was like, yeah, you should infuse milk. I was like, do people want to drink their cannabis in milk? I don't know if that's a thing. Y'all can let us know. But I think that's just like a funny, relevant interjection of just like, it really is. It's like Levo, tCheck, y'all have created a pathway for consumers to really be creative in how they're consuming their cannabis. And so whether the dispensary model market is providing those products to consumers at mass or just accessibility based on what market you're in. Like I have seen some brands introduce crackers. I don't know how, popular they have been. I don't know. Again, it's like one of those things like I could do a savory cannabis, but I always end up wanting something sweet. It's like my little dessert before bed. I eat my little gummy. But the creativity and the applications, even like you were saying, topicals, I think that's one that people don't always necessarily think about when they're thinking of, oh, I can make my own infusion at home. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
you don't just have to eat it. You can also slather it all over your body. And so understanding that infusion, the process, the testing is very important equally, right? So,
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of topicals, because, getting old and
yeah,
stuff, my hands hurt and, so I love them. Yeah.
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 What
Yeah.
is the I guess like if y'all have, I don't know if you have like I'm sure you do just because you're so customer centric. Like I guess what are some of the coolest stories or things that you've heard people making and testing with tCheck so far?
So I don't know about coolest.
Most interesting, most
Most interesting.
peculiar.
Yeah, well, cannabis infused coffee, right? The bullet coffee, right? With the shot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
shot of butter. That one's pretty fun to do. I hear a lot about savory stuff. Okay.
Mm.
Somebody actually sent in a recipe for cannabis infused chimichurri. I'm not sure if you're familiar with chimichurri. Uh,
Yes, I am. That's delicious. That is now piquing my interest.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So that's been fun. Cannabis infused buffalo wings was also a fun one that somebody submitted to us. Just
Okay.
yeah, but you have to do it the proper buffalo way, okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
What's
which
the
is
what's the proper way? Yeah, tell us.
you start with a hot sauce like Durkee's or something like that. And
Hmm.
you mix equals amounts of that and butter, like pure butter, okay? This is not, a diet kind of food.
No, no.
Okay.
So it
But go
tastes
to Buffalo,
good.
New York. That's how they make it. And to me, I went to school in New York, so I'm like, yeah, you gotta do the tried and true Buffalo style wings, and Buffalo
Wow.
cannabis infused Buffalo wings is actually pretty awesome.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, you're making us all hungry now. So everybody's like, okay, note to self, go get some cannabis infused buffalo wings, test it with tCheck device, check, check, check. Yes, I love it. No, that's very cool. I guess to wrap up, is there anything else that you want to mention to the viewers? Anything else you want to share? Otherwise, I think people can obviously find you website, tcheck.com. Y'all are tcheck underscore official on Instagram.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Social
Yeah.
media is always
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
Ugh.
right. Yeah. So just to actually thank you to all the customers out there, right? You really inspire us to build, better and bigger and nicer things. And so, let us know how we're doing. If we can figure out how to make things work better for you, let us know. If it's not working for you, let us know, right? And so, we can only improve that way. So, good news, bad news, whatever, just reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I think that's really important. Just yeah, to reiterate for people, it's just like the cannabis industry is so new and our access to these products is changing very rapidly. I think the evolution of different cannabinoids is changing. So to patient's point as well, if there are cannabinoids that you're really loving, like in our world, I would say the standard are, the CBD, the THCA, or THCA also, yes, but 8 and 9, Delta 8, Delta 9, CBG, CBN. We're also getting a lot of THCV in curiosity around. And then the most recent one is CBC, which to me, I don't know nearly enough about, but I'm very curious about CBC. So I hear it's even more in that like anti-inflammatory, really good for like topicals or skincare applications. So if you're
Oh,
someone who's
cool.
like, I got to go make some topicals, CBC
I
might
gotta
be
try that. Yeah.
the cannabinoids. So that's just on my end, what I think that we're seeing and selling and kind of hearing in the marketplace. But obviously, yeah, whatever you guys are coming across, whether it's products that Restart is selling, you want Restart to sell, products that you're using through tCheck, the tCheck 2, tCheck 3, you want to test different cannabinoids, different bases, definitely reach out to their team. But thanks, y'all, for tuning into our last and latest expert series. As always, we appreciate you guys watching, tuning in, engaging with us, and learning a little bit about brands that we know, we love, and we want to share with you guys and help you with your Can and Curious journeys. Also, stay tuned. Check our Instagram out. We're at Restart CBD. We are actually doing a giveaway with tCheck, which is coming soon. So check our channel out and maybe you can be a lucky recipient. Otherwise, you can visit them on social media at tCheck_official and tCheck.com and get a tCheck for yourself. So thanks again, Peyton. We always appreciate